a wise man knows that he can't do it alone. That in an abundance of counselors who he's vulnerable with, who he says, hey, could you help me? Can you lend me your advice? Can you help me out? I can't do this alone. There is victory. What's up, fam? It's your boy JJ. This is a mini Manso Friday. I can't wait for this episode. Some episodes you prep for more than others. This one I've prepped for a lot. I asked a lot of women a specific question that we're going to listen to. They all sent voice memos. You'll recognize some of the voices. You won't recognize other ones. So it was super, super fun to kind of have a hypothesis about what I think is going on and then hear from the women themselves what is actually going on in the mind of a woman when they choose the bad boy over the nice guy. I think the heart and the objective for this episode is that if you're a genuinely good dude, like a safe guy, and you just kind of feel like you've been on the sidelines because you're nervous to ask out women, you feel like you're just playing your cards safe. I think the objective of this episode for you is, hey, I want to encourage you, if you know what you're looking for and you're confident in that, to be confident in that and be really passionate. No, I actually do want an awesome godly marriage. And I know, right, because of wisdom, what exactly I'm looking for. And I really want to pursue and chase after that in that sense. I'm not trying to create an army of men who are asking out every single woman that they fancy and find attractive. I actually think, according to some studies that I've heard of recently, the age-old question is women are saying, none of the guys are asking us out. And then the guys are saying, well, we are asking you out. And you guys are all saying no. And what they've typically found is, in general, men are asking out a very small amount of the girls that they just find really attractive and hot. And then that's obviously not the majority of women. So the majority of women who are just maybe moderately attractive or, quote, not that hot girl, the new hot girl writing community group, they're just not getting asked out. So they're both kind of are right. But today's episode really is for, I think, what I hear a lot and see a lot is the guys like to say in the circles that I've been in, and this is a common complaint, dude, honestly, I'm a nice guy and I'm always finishing last. I'm asking out girls and they're saying no, and they're always picking the bad boy. So that's the objective of the episode. Like, let's answer that question. Is that really true? Is that really what's going on? Let's get into the mind of women and see if they do pick the bad boy, what's going on there? Is there anything to glean from it and to learn from it? Before we do that, really quick, and this is going to be much faster. I'm working on my intros, okay? I'm working on it. What I'm loving and in my DMs. What I'm loving, okay. Point blank, game night. I think... Yeah, I heard this from Grant Skeldon. This is so good. If you leave your friends on a Thursday night and they say where you're going and you're saying, well, I'm going to a community group, something's wrong. Something's off. And I really think the commonality of a community group is that you guys genuinely have friendships. Like, you don't just see each other once a week and then you come back the next week and it's like, a checklist. It's like, you should genuinely be connecting with these people. I hope that on a Friday night, you guys enjoy hanging out with one another. That for me is real community. Monday through Saturday, you guys are voluntarily in your free time finding ways to connect and hang out because you enjoy each other. One of my favorite ways to do that is game nights. Don't call it a singles night. Don't throw a singles mixer. Just have a game night, because the majority of people who are coming in their 20s and 30s are single, but we want the couples there too. I love game nights as a way to connect, that playfulness, that funness. I have a Nintendo Switch and I never thought I would use it as much as I do with adults who are in their 30s and the married couples that we're around. The couples that we're around here in Nashville now, they love the Switch, and they specifically love one game that I learned from them when I got here, which is called Night Squad. And there's a second variation of it called Night Squad 2. You can play with 8 people. You literally run around and swing a sword. It's kind of like Bomberman if you ever played that on your TI-84 calculators. Super simple, super easy to learn. Anyone can play. It's a very small learning curve. And we will literally play for hours and hours and hours. So that is what I'm loving. Game night specifically. Get a Nintendo Switch. You can put up to 8 people playing this thing. And it is so much fun. Okay. And in my DMs, I had a quick question. I'll paraphrase it. Basically, a guy was asking about missionally dating. Hey, JJ, I've been seeing this girl. She's not really a Christian. It's been about 3 months. I really do like her. What do I need to know? And I think this is a lesson. If you're missionally dating now or you're thinking about it, I'll be honest, you're probably not going to listen to me and you're probably going to have to learn this lesson the hard way, which is fine. You're going to learn it, I hope, one way or the other. But if you're listening to me or you have a friend, the biggest challenge I find with missionally dating is this. Guys will meet a girl, they are attracted to her, but she just doesn't really love Jesus. She is genuinely not that strong in her faith. And they know that at the end of the day. And they say, well, maybe I can, get her there. I just find it's almost impossible to do that out of a pure heart and great intentions without making it seem like this. Hey, if you focus on your relationship with God, I am the little pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the little prize for you connecting with God. And we elevate our relationship, our romantic relationship, to be basically on par or like the dessert of getting to know God. Like we're kind of like, if you perform well enough and get to know him and strengthen your faith, then you get me. And I'm just like, man, what an arrogant, awful place for me to ever put myself. So really, if you care about her and her soul more than you care about you and your romantic aspect and relationship, then you would say her soul is more important. And for me to effectively maybe quote witness to her and lead her, it would be better to do it as a friend. Don't blur the lines. Don't elevate myself to the place of, it's as important with your relationship with Christ, because it's not even close. Get her into community with women who love God, and that is going to be your best bet. I'm just going to be friends with you. I'm going to get you in a community with women who love God. They're probably going to be way better at genuinely connecting and leading you than I will. And then yeah, that's it. I wouldn't even play the game. We'll see what happens in a year. I would just let it go. I'm so serious. That is going to be 99% of the time the best way to handle it. So that's in my DMs. Thank you guys for asking. Let's listen to what these women have to say. We're going to go ahead and play these voice memos and let's get into the episode.
Have I chose the bad boy before? Absolutely. The reason why, I think there's several. Sometimes boring is better. And if all you know is chaos, like boring can seem not attractive, or, we're looking for that spark and that like instant connection and chemistry. And sometimes the bad boy, I think, can provide that because maybe the bad boy is a little bit more charismatic and show-offy, like funny. Sometimes I feel like the bad boy is normally funny. And for me, I like funny. So I can be attracted to that, but not saying that all funny guys are bad guys. So yeah, for me personally, in the past, I would say they can seem a lot more confident. And maybe it's like masking, right? Because most bad boys are super insecure. It can come off as confidence. Like I feel like the bad guy in the past has been like the one to really step up and pursue. And maybe the quote good guys are maybe a little more careful and more just not as confident maybe, and not as I'm going to go after her and I'm going to pursue her. So I think maybe that's why too. I think maybe for me personally, thinking about a toxic ex that I dated in high school, he was confident. And so as a woman, I'm attracted to confidence. And so unfortunately then later you're like, oh, you're psycho, dude.
I think there's a few reasons why there was a good season of my life where I just kept choosing the bad boy, or I enjoyed being chosen by the bad boy in my situation. The worst one was because somewhere in therapy, I realized that it made the 16-year-old girl in me feel cool. And growing up in church, because I never really felt like I fit in at school, and I was so desperate in school to be accepted by the cool kids or into the cool group. Just one time I wanted to be kissed by the bad boy at the party. Never seemed to happen. But that started happening in my early young adult years. And I realized later on that somewhere in my little lady brain, it was making the 16-year-old girl in me feel validated finally. So we had to heal that part of me. But I think also there was a part of me that felt like I understood the bad boys in a way that nobody else seemed to understand them. Like I was the one that was going to help them, which I think is the part of me that's the evangelist, just like slightly gone off track. You know what I mean? And so I felt like I could change them. They were going to be different with me. And though everybody else had warned me that they were going to break my heart, I was the exception to the rule. The only problem is that I was literally never the exception to the rule and literally always left heartbroken and regretting my decisions to choose or be chosen by the bad boy. So we're just really grateful that those days are behind us.
Okay, I'm going to give you, I think, 2 reasons why I did end up going for the bad boy. One was in a little bit of a healthier season and one was in a not so healthy season. So number 1, I do feel like there's something about the bad boy where it's mysterious and he's kind of leaving you wanting more. And there's something in you psychologically from women where you feel like you can change them, you can fix them, and you can solve all their problems. And so here you are, this cute little sweet innocent girl, as I was, and I thought I could possibly change this person. And there's something in them where they affirm you just enough that they leave you wanting more, but you always have this gap or this space or something where you're hanging and you don't have enough affirmation, or they're starting to try to change you. And so there's something really unhealthy in me and in most women where we feel like we can be the fixers and the helpers. And that's totally what I was doing. I also think even in my healthiest state, there was still something in me where I didn't totally, I don't think, value myself enough. And so even though he wasn't like the baddest guy ever, there was still something in me where I didn't fully value and know my worth in what I deserved. And it was until I met my now spouse, who wasn't necessarily the bad boy. He showed all of his cards. It freaked me out at the beginning. It repelled me at first. I was like, whoa, no games here, no chase. I wasn't used to that. And I think as women, we're not used to that. We think that mystery equates to love, or this is the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this chase and this crazy little game. And it's just not supposed to be that way. And so my husband was the first guy that I actually liked. And when I was healthy, I was finally able to understand and realize that's what I needed. This was what was good for me. This is safe, and safe is good. That was my own personal story. I'm really, really glad I went with the nice guy. And, you know, my now husband is nice, and he's more than just a nice guy. He wasn't icky, but he pursued me and he didn't play any games. And as women, that is what we need. You don't want to have a guy that constantly leaves you on red or constantly leaves you hanging, that he's clear and he's kind and he's intentional. And that's what you want. And that's what my now husband did for me. And I'm so glad I chose that, because you want that in marriage. Trust me, ladies. Okay. Hope this helps. Bye.
Okay, guys, that was so much fun. I genuinely love getting into the mind of a woman. Why would you pick the bad boy in this situation? Why would you pick him when you're maybe in an unhealthy place? I love how a couple of them talked about, well, I was in an unhealthy place, and even when I was in a healthy place, this is how it played out. Let me start here. Before we jump into the couch therapist, the psychiatrist aspects where we get into their mind, we try and break down, I'll be honest, the worst place we can live in dating, the most unproductive, unfruitful, worst place for you, your heart, your mind, your soul to live in is trying to get into the mind of the other person. Like, I just see it becomes so fruitless. All you do is end up fantasizing, thinking, dreaming, like you live in fantasy world of what they could or could not be thinking. You're not like you have left reality, you've left walking with God, and you are just out in no man's land. You're trying to deep dive their motivations for choosing or not choosing you. And I'm like, they might not even know that answer. Why do you think it's helpful or productive? And a lot of times we're just trying to cope, right? They didn't pick me, so I'm trying to cope or figure it out, or I'm trying to present and market and sell myself. So let me get into their motivations. Let me really dream and think of what they might be wanting and see how I can present myself as this. Man, like we'll do it now because we have actually some women who are brave enough to be candid and honest about their past. But I'm just like, dude, like, let's just not try to sit for hours upon hours and try and second guess and decipher what is going on in the mind of the other person. And let's just live in reality, and let's live with truth, and let's live with what we know to be true about ourselves and how the world works and the reality of dating. And I just see so many singles spinning and wasting their time. Like, just think about like a truck stuck in the mud, just spinning their tires. And that's the best analogy. I feel like singles are stuck when they're just trying to figure out what's going on in the mind of others. It only leads to complaining. It only leads to just being the victim. I'm just like, man, we got to find a way to get over that hump, leave that reality, and just move forward with what we know to be true. Okay. But if we were going to deep dive what we just heard and listened to, number one, the ultimate thing I think that women do when they do choose the bad boy, okay, and there's a lot here. It's the fixer. It's the fixer aspect. And they think you heard Elise. I'm going to out her because it's pretty obvious it's Elise. I'm the exception. I can change them. I can fix them, which does so much for the woman. And we experience this as men. We experience this as human beings. If we're being honest, in our flesh, it feels so good to help. It feels really good to give $100 bill to the homeless guy in the corner. It makes us feel good in our flesh, right? There's a ton of validation in our flesh that can come from fixing and helping and changing. A lot of times that's a very familiar dynamic for men and women. They come from a broken home, broken friendships, relationships, where they are always the quote healthy one, and they can fix the other. That is the savior complex, right? And it's a lot more having to do with their trauma and their wounding and validation than it is about the other person a lot of the time. And there's another aspect I think that some of the women hinted at where it feels really good to be validated and wanted by the bad boy or the hard to get person. I mean, us as men know that feeling too, especially in our flesh. Like, you dab up your buddy and you say, man, I can't believe you landed that girl. She is so way out of your league. What does that do to the guy? It makes him feel really good. That is like an ultimate ego booster, puffer upper for the male ego. You landed a girl who is way out of your league. She's way hotter than anyone that you should be able to get, blah, blah, blah. Like, that feels really good and validating. So it's the same thing for a woman. That hard to get bad boy kind of type, mysterious type chose them. Yeah, that feels really good. And a lot of times a layer underneath that is, and I loved one of our voices, because this is true for men and women. It's, I think as Christians, it's really difficult to genuinely believe I'm valuable. And the word, this is such a loaded word. I deserve a great guy. Or for men, I genuinely believe it is a hard statement to believe. I deserve a great woman. And I think that's genuinely a lot harder as Christians. We have a really, really weird relationship with that word deserve. I've always kind of cringed in my spirit when I've heard that word deserve. Because, I grew up, especially in that evangelical background of the only thing I deserve is brimstone and fire as a sinner. I am nothing. And I'm like, what is the truth in that statement? And what is the unhealthy, like, woe is me, like, is that overblown? But I think it's really hard to come from that and then genuinely believe, no, I do deserve a great spouse. I'm like, well, I still don't know how I'd say it. I would say maybe, how can I root this in God's truth in Scripture? I believe that I'm made in God's image. And I believe, as someone who's walking with God and wants to glorify Him with a healthy, godly relationship, I therefore desire and want to be in as healthy and as godly of a relationship as possible. And in order for that to happen, I want to marry the godliest, healthiest, wisest spouse I can. So it's a little bit less about deserving and a little bit more about what I know to be true and wise and good. But at the end of the day, you really could say, I'm made in God's image, and it's unlawful to treat someone and reduce them out of God's image. And there's a fundamental human law that we all should be respected and valued and treasured because we're made in God's image. And I think that can be really easy to believe about how we treat other people, and it can be really hard to believe about ourselves. And that's just me being honest. I mean, I am there. Like, I am there. Like, I really wrestle with that. And I would probably say the last aspect of what we heard is, and I generally find this to be true, is unhealthy women pick unhealthy men. And the opposite is totally true too. Unhealthy men also, in general, pick unhealthy women. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be because we don't value ourselves. We don't really believe at the end of the day, I should be with someone who treats me kindly and respectfully. I'm so familiar with being ran over and laying my life down and turning the other cheek that even when it comes to relationship and dating, I'm familiar with settling for someone who doesn't treat me that way. So I would say, as far as like in the mind of a woman, those are some of the reasons that stood out to me in what I just heard. If you are a guy and you truly have great character, you truly are humble, you truly are walking out, like, my favorite way is you are cultivating a deep, rich relationship with God in your life and pursuing holiness right now, and you feel like you're overlooked, I'll just be honest. A lot of the times, it has everything to do with her and nothing to do with you for why you got passed over. I would say, if you are a genuinely great guy with great character and you feel like you're being passed over and you're trying to make sense of it, I would just be honest, man. And this is hard to believe because you need to make sense of why you're getting passed over. I would just say, honestly, if I'm being transparent, don't take it so personal, because it probably has everything to do with her and nothing to do with you. And probably the opposite is true for you. Think about all the women that you've passed over. It's not like genuinely something was wrong with them. It probably had everything to do with you and nothing to do with them, right? And there is an aspect to this conversation where, I think when you're young and immature, we chase excitement over healthiness, right? Think about like your early 20s, getting 8 hours of sleep, longevity and health, and staying hydrated and taking care of your body and making sure you're loose and stretched. It's just not the top of your mind, right? And in the same way, I think when we're young and immature and dating in relationships, being in a healthy relationship is not really a priority, right? The thrill and the fun and excitement of a relationship is. And that's what we choose. We choose what's exciting and urgent over what we know to be important, right? Choosing what's important and healthy and good for you is typically a sign of wisdom, right? And prioritization and knowing what you know to be true. So, immaturity, I think a good way to define that is seeking the thrill of today rather than the long-term health of tomorrow. Right. And I mean, I think that's true biblically. Like as we seek experiences in God, as we seek churches and pastors and preaching and worship, like there's an element of truth of seeking the thrill of today and the experience of today rather than the long-term health of tomorrow. Like my favorite definition of sanctification is long obedience in the same direction. That doesn't sound very thrilling, does it? Right? But it absolutely is healthy. And then I was shocked. This was not part of my hypothesis, but number two, the reason why maybe the nice guy finishes last or the bad boy gets chosen is this. They're the only ones asking. The bad boys, 9 times out of 10, are the only ones asking and putting themselves out there. And I would say there is an element to this that is totally true. Totally true. The player, the nice guy, I totally think the reason why he's getting picked is because he's like machine gun firing, asking out any girl and every girl in public, strangers in the church group. Like he is asking out anyone and everyone. And you're going to get yeses, right? Like if you ask 100 times, you're going to have more like a quantity. Say your success rate's 10%, you're going to have 10 women saying yes versus I think the nice guy. And what I would say is when I say nice guy, what I'm really trying to invoke is think about like the nice passive guy. The nice passive guy. I really think he finishes last because he's not even asking. He's not even asking. And he thinks he's asking, but he might be asking like once a year in some ways. Maybe he's asking more than that. I'm just saying as a stereotype and as an example, he might be asking once a year. Sometimes he might be asking out more. I think there's just some guys, maybe they're like not the most buff guy. Maybe they're asking out a lot of women and they feel so deflated, so, just like angry and frustrated. Like JJ, I've asked out 20 women in the past year and I've had 0 say yes. That's really difficult and that's really challenging. And I think for that kind of situation, my advice and encouragement for someone who's been asking a lot and still feel like they are finishing last is this. And this is like part of shooting your shot is we're divorced from the results of life, right? As Christians, as men, the best place I can live is in the reality that my confidence in who I am and my identity does not depend at all on a yes or a no. And that's easy to say about the no's. And it's really hard to keep in mind about the yes. Because when you do get a yes, and when you do have something hopeful and encouraging or someone that you find attractive, like the brain science of these dating apps is fascinating. The dopamine hits of the dating apps is addicting. Why? Because it feels good to be validated and have someone swipe right on you and say, yeah, I find you attractive. That feels really good, right, in our flesh. So the key is whether they say yes or whether they say no, I'm not letting this affect and pump up my ego or deflate it. In fact, I don't have an ego. My ego is not built on the result of life. I would say my message here for the nice guy who feels like he has 1 shot per year to ask out a woman and he can't do any more than that is I would probably encourage him to maybe ask out a little bit more. Not go crazy. And what I would call this is wisdom and discernment. Like have the wisdom and discernment and the confidence that, I know what I'm looking for. I think there's an aspect to, hey, it's just supposed to happen when it happens that is a disservice to men because guess what? You're not really asking out. Like my favorite analogy when it comes to dating is your job search, right? Think about you just graduate college and everyone's asking you, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What's your career of choice? And you say, I don't know, man. I think it's just going to happen when it happens. You're going to be living in your mom's basement for quite a while, I think, if that's your attitude. So there is absolutely an element of if you are single and you are a man, and we're being honest, you are at a place in your life where you want to be married, you want to be a husband, you want to lead, you want to provide, you feel like you're ready. Passiveness is not in the recipe for searching for a wife. Okay. But like passiveness has no place in that recipe. Now there's a difference between passiveness and discernment or wisdom or withholding, right? Like I'm genuinely surveying and looking, and I want to ask, but I know I'm not just going to go out and ask the next 5 girls in the next 5 weeks to go out on a date, right? I think there's like a pace to it that is genuine wisdom, but you also know like it's not Eminem. You don't have one shot, one opportunity. It's a chance to go, okay, I'm not going to rap again, but there's absolutely that element of like, you can ask out a girl and it just be a low stakes date. Okay. As I was doing this, I literally just got a text notification from a friend's friend saying, hey, JJ, I just took your advice to just treat it like a low stakes coffee date. And we went on a coffee tour and it helped me so much. I finally asked out the girl that I've been wanting to ask, and we're going on a second date next week. That's the text that just popped up on my laptop on this point. And that's exactly what I mean. I think for the genuinely great guy who doesn't feel like he's been throwing his hat into the ring often or frequently, my encouragement is, hey, like if you genuinely know you want to get married to a great godly woman and you find one who's moderately attractive and that you're open, just ask her out. Like if that's where you are on the pendulum, let's get right back down to the middle. And if you feel like you're over asking, let's get back to the pendulum right there in the middle, a nice moderate, wise, genuine approach. If you had to put a number on it, I feel like, I don't know, it just changes. If you're online dating versus trying to date in your community group, like that changes, right? Asking out 5 women at one time in your community group doesn't really go that well, okay? But asking out 5 different girls on Hinge that you matched with over the past week is a little different, right? Like I just think it's hard to give prescriptive advice for all those situations. I would just say, man, be as discerning as wise as possible and then go out and confidently ask, because I really think there's an element to the nice guy finishing last is that the bad boys, quote, the bad boys, they're just more risk tolerant. And I think the nice guy is more risk averse. And I'm not saying that's always bad, right? There's a genuine wisdom in just not asking out anything that breathes and is a female. Okay. But I do think, there are some men listening here who are just so nervous, maybe from your upbringing, your youth pastor just teaching, that had good intention, where asking out a girl for a coffee feels like a marriage proposal. And if that's you, I would just say, we need to like ratchet down the pressure and just really just, hey, it's just a date. You're just getting to know them. You're just building friendship. You're just building connection, and just take it one date at a time. Okay. And then the other side, it's like, yeah, we need to come back down. We need to regather. We probably need to stop asking out women so much if it's deeply affecting us on that kind of level. And I would probably just close on this. I have become really passionate about encouraging men lately in my life, because I look back and I'm like, man, when has the Bible ever called me to just actually be a nice guy? Like what is the scripture, if we went to the Bible and I just did Command F and I said nice? Let's do that right now. Okay, I got my laptop. Is the word nice in the Bible? Okay, so you ready? So I just Googled it, like Joe Rogan style, you know how they pull up Google. And does the word nice appear in the Bible? The word, quote, nice does not appear in any serious English translation of the Bible, but the Bible does use words similar to convey the idea of nice, like kindness or gentleness or meekness. And here's the problem with that. Meekness and niceness are not even in the same universe. And I actually have loved this word. This word has become the word of my year. I love it. I think about it. I dwell on it. The word meekness should never be ever confused with the word niceness. And I just want you guys to think about a picture for you. What comes to your mind when you think about weakness? And here's what it really means. It means bridled strength. It means bridled strength. We're not talking about this little gentle colt, this little lamb. We're talking about a massive bronco, like a brute of a horse where the muscles are just popping out. And it has the meekness, the gentleness to bridle its strength. Think about this massive horse, and you can put a little 4-year-old girl on it, and it knows how to bridle its strength and caress and be gentle enough to serve and comfort a little 4-year-old girl riding on its back. One of my favorite pictures of meekness is this: the lion and the lamb. The lion and the lamb, the bridled strength of the lion with the gentleness and the kindness of the love to warm and provide and nurture and nourish the little innocent lamb, right? And I'm like, man, go to the Proverbs. Like, we love Proverbs 31 for the women. What about for the men? Like, what is the Proverbs man? Proverbs 24, 5-6. A wise man, a wise man. That is what we want to be, a wise man. What is he full of? A wise man is full of strength. He's a man of knowledge that enhances his might. For by wise guidance, you can wage war, and an abundance of counselors, there is victory. A wise man, so strong, he knows what to wage war on. He knows that there's a war around him. He knows that there's a war between good and evil, between his flesh and holiness, and that he is fighting. And I love how it finishes. In an abundance of counselors, there is victory. Amazing verse. A wise man knows that he can't do it alone. That in an abundance of counselors who he's vulnerable with, who he says, hey, could you help me? Can you lend me your advice? Can you help me out? I can't do this alone. There is victory. And I'm just like, man, the Bible does not call you as a man to ever be nice. The Bible calls you to be, you're signing up for a future job as the pastor, the protector, the provider, the high priest of your family. What do you think the training regimen looks for that, right? We're training for like T-ball, and we got like the NFL where there's big forces, right? There's lots of inertia and tackling, right? Like it's hard. Do you think nice does well in the big leagues? Do you think nice does well in the real world? And that's just my deep encouragement is like, whatever your heart has been ignited for and passionate about, maybe it's just ice cold and you're not passionate about anything. I just don't think the Bible and God calls you to live an unpassionate life. And maybe you are passionate, but it's about the wrong things, right? You think about that idea, and I'll close on this, boiling water. And for some of us, it's like, man, we have a hot plate, we have, that stove and it's cooking, and we just have that spiritual pot on the side and it's just ice cold. And we're cooking it under gambling, fantasy football, work, whatever it might be, whatever vice it is. And I'm just like, man, let's take that application of passion and apply it to God's word or life, how we operate. And I'm like, if you know what you want as a man, which is a godly marriage, and you're ignited for that godly woman, let's be confident in what we want and what we know to be a good thing, which is an amazing character-filled woman in front of us, and let's pursue it, So that's my take on why the nice guy finishes last, or why women choose the bad boy. I hope that was illuminating from a women's perspective, but I think more importantly, my call is for men to wisely ask out women, no matter what side of the pendulum you're on, and embracing that call of being the man that God created you to be. All right, blessings to you. Have a great day.